Jason will take us through some information about real estate redevelopment.
Welcome and good evening, everyone. Well, as put here, player, that is more of a phrase that's used for a multiple role task, which throughout the course of a day, I will change hats frequently, going from everywhere from a visionary designer, creative thinker, accountant, bookkeeper, project manager, various trades, many hats through the course of the day. As far as throughout the course of the day, when I'm on site, I can be quite the handyman, picking up loose ends, finishing off where trades left off. I'm somewhat of a perfectionist, and I really like to pay attention to details. So I will bounce around, and I've become quite proficient at electrical, plumbing, drywalling, HVAC, carpentry. Those are just to name a few things where I can jump in if something needs to be done. I don't need to wait around to get my specific trade or skilled trade back in. I can at least pick up the tools and get through a pinch so the project doesn't get delayed. And these are pretty good skills to have, because time is money. Businessman. Well, I have become over the years, a real estate speculator, picked up bookkeeping and accounting, project managing, public relations, and general contractor. And I guess just to give some background information, which I skipped, I had about a 20-year career as a graphic designer, which Tammy did briefly mention. And I guess through the end of that, I decided I needed a change. I'd gotten bored with graphic design and felt I needed to change my canvas. So I took all my skills. I've always been handy, and did a lot of soul searching, and I found that the real estate market was something that really interested me. It really spoke to me on a lot of fronts. My family had a background in real estate, and I guess it was kind of in my blood. But from the standpoint of looking for projects, finding houses, many real estate agents know that the worse shape a house is in, then the more excited I get. Whereas most people tend to shy away from those projects. So this here's an example of a house that I took on back in 2017. This was a one-bedroom tiny bungalow in East York. And it was a private sale, introduced to me actually from a real estate agent. And I walked through it and I speculated the property. I knew the land in that neighborhood, as I'd been working there for a little over a year at that point. And I said, you know, this is a good deal. And considering, I did the math and I figured out what the property was really valued at, and what other homes in the neighborhood would go for based on various sizes and designs that I was looking at, and came to the conclusion that I had a pretty big buffer, a margin for error, which is something at that point in the game I was pretty fresh at house building. So I gave myself a pretty big buffer. And had I did not have that, I probably wouldn't have taken on the project, but decided to go for my very first complete tear down and rebuild, only leaving 2 walls of the house. And the slide we're looking at now is what I had conceptualized the house would look like when it was done. So Tam, we could just go back 1 slide. So we went from this tiny little 1-bedroom bungalow through the design stage, where I brought on an architect and structural engineer and came up with this beautiful concept, which was essentially 95% of all my ideas and creative that I work with the architect to actually plot and get on paper. And then we followed it straight through to production, which took us about 14 months. And this was the final product, which looked almost identical to what the rendering was, as well as my vision in my head when we started the project. So it was a pretty great achievement, a sense of accomplishment, especially considering I never built a full house before. So the process on its own, it's really like an organized chaos. You are balancing so many things between trades, organizing materials, needing to coordinate your finishings, which for the most part need to be done at the front of the project. So you know what dimensions to build your rooms and make sure that your 48-inch vanity is not going to need to fit into a room that's only 47 inches wide. Ask me how I know. So the old phrase, measure twice, cut once, really does fall into play in a huge, huge deal. And the more you can plan ahead of the game, up front, on paper, before you've even broken ground, put a shovel in the ground, or done any construction, the faster and more organized your entire project will go, with less surprises, less cost overruns. It'll just be a much, much smoother process. So the building process takes, like I said, a lot of organization. And again, this presentation gives very broad strokes on the whole process. But it all starts with the plan, and then you do your basement work first. So if there's any plumbing, any drainage work, you start at the bottom and essentially work your way up. So you'll get your foundations in, you'll do your plumbing work, build your frame on your house, and there's a whole waterfall of tasks. And the most important part is keeping organized and keeping all the trades abreast of your production and your timelines. Because there's a whole waterfall of tasks, and it's really a house of cards and a domino effect, that if someone doesn't get scheduled, or someone does get scheduled and doesn't show up, it really affects so many other people down the road. As an example, if your electrician is scheduled to come in and he doesn't, then that really causes a lot of problems for everybody who you have lined up following him. So it's really a big domino effect. Now, finishing and flourishing. These are really where things start to get fun. So once you've got all your construction, for the most part, finished, you start bringing in all your finishing trades. So drywall goes in, the paint comes in, bring in your trim carpenter, start bringing in all your appliances, you're bringing in all your vanities, your countertops, kitchens get built, and you really start to see the project come together. I think it's really exciting. And this vision you've had in your head really starts to take shape after you've been looking at raw framing and loose wiring and everything that's behind the walls. It's all covered up now, and everything's starting to take shape and take color. And it's pretty exciting. And at this point, you have to start getting ready to decide, is this going to be a rental property? Are you going to be flipping this property and reselling it? At that point, you need to start talking about getting in the stagers, which in my opinion is a pretty important detail if you're going to be reselling a home. And this is because people in general have a hard time visualizing what a house will look like when they're living in it. how the rooms will work and what their furniture will look like and how functional it will be for them. So when you bring in all that furniture for them, you set up the kitchen, you put chairs and a dining room table in, you bring in beds, and you bring in couches and TVs, and try and set up the house as much as possible. It really helps people get a better idea of how they're going to feel in the house. And even paramount to that is when you're going into this is to really understand who your demographic and your market is that you want to sell the house to. Because the furniture that you want to bring in to stage the house really needs to be in line with their lifestyle and their tastes. So those are some things to think about. What we're looking at here is the house that I showed you earlier. We're just going to take a few snapshots here, walk through the video tour that we had put together for our marketing when we sold this house. And again, this was my first full design build, and it was really inspired by a lot of what I like and my tastes and what I'd like to see in a house. So here we walk through the front door. It's nice and big, open concept. There's holes in the ceiling that you can look down from the second floor. There's bridges to get to the bedrooms. Lots of nice, bright, open space. White oak floors. I really like wood. This was a custom vanity top because it was a very unique space to work with that was in there. If we can pause it right now, Tam, maybe not. There's,
Did I miss it?
and just back it up a little bit. This countertop here on the left in the bottom, this is an extension from the main granite countertop. And this was built using the original ceiling joists from the original home. So we reclaimed this wood. And what you can't see is underneath it, there's actually a bench that matches it. So it was a really nice feature to bring in some of the original house and repurpose it in the new home. And right here where that plant is in the little office space, that was the original window, back window to the house. So everything we're seeing right now was all brand new. This was the part of the new addition.
Wonderful. We have a question that I will read to you, and we'll let the video play and people can see all your fabulous work. It says, Jason, this may be a silly question, but I'll say there are no silly questions.
Just silly people.
I have no real estate experience, but a family member suggested partnering up to buy a property that could both provide a passive income in the future from renters, but also give us a place to our aging parents. Does this sound like a weird idea or a viable one? Any red flags on the idea itself?
It's a great question, and it's actually a great idea and completely viable. So with every house that I build, including the one that we're looking at right now, I always add in a basement apartment. It works on so many levels. One, if you're looking for the house to resale, property in Toronto now is high. It's extremely hard to get one to buy the property. And if you do, they come with a pretty hefty price tag. So by building in a basement apartment, then it allows for the owner, whoever buys the property, to live on the main floor and the upstairs and enjoy their home and be able to rent out their basement and subsidize their mortgage. On the flip side, like this particular home, I went through the committee of adjustment process, which took about 5 months at the time, and got this approved for not a legal apartment, but a legal nanny suite, which still classified it as a single family dwelling, but allowed me to put in a separate full kitchen and bedroom and living area in the basement. And when I designed the home, I had framed and built the stairwell to the basement. So at some point, if the owners wanted to, they could close it off and make it completely private and secure for a rentable unit. However, the owner that purchased this house ended up having her extended family move into the basement, and they're living there. The same thing happened actually on the home I just finished about a year ago now. We built a second suite in the basement, and same situation. The owners live on the main and second floors, and their sister, one of their sisters, has taken over and is living in the basement and helping them subsidize their mortgage, as well as look after their newborn, which worked out really well for them. So by all means, I think having a basement apartment sure adds a lot of value to a house, and is definitely a viable option.
Related slash follow-up question. What are the chief determinants for choosing to rent versus choosing to sell after you're done?
Well, I'm actually in that predicament right now, where I've been working on a project for just coming up to 8 months now. The initial intention was to rent it, and still strongly considering that. However, the real estate market is really strong right now, and there is a lot of incentive for me to just put it on the market and get my money out of it now. Additionally, there's another property that I've been really looking at, a really great opportunity, and a little bit shy on cash for it. So it may make sense to sell the property, take the money out of it, and help finance this new project, or potentially we'll have to see in the coming weeks what really makes sense after talking to my accountant. If we can swing holding on to the rental property and financing it properly to take some money out of it with the new value that I forced into it, can potentially help use that to finance the next property. So it really depends on what your finances are at the time and what you're comfortable with doing.
Thank you, darling. That was fabulous.